Good morning. We're in these days, the rest of the country's cooling off, and it's still pretty hot here, and but it's going to cool off sooner or later. And I saw an ad, just a headline. I don't even know for sure what it was, but just the headline. Some scientists, rich people, they're thinking of putting a sunscreen between the sun and the earth to help take care of global warming. And I think of all the money and all the time and all the energy put in to a project like that, and I think what a waste of time. Just the things that people spend their lives on, the vanity that people invest their lives in, their time, their talent, their treasure, in absolute emptiness and vanity. And I'm going to be in the book of Acts, chapter 16 in just a minute. But just thinking a little bit about eternity, I've always enjoyed sports. I probably, as a young man, an unsaved young man, basketball was something I did a lot of. It was maybe a cause, something that helped me, I don't know, have a purpose, a vision, whatever you might want to say. And I'm not saying I live for it, but it was the thing that perhaps kept my focus, kept me from being stupid with some of the things that I could have done with my life. But when you start thinking about the things that people live for, and the empty things that people live for, the vain things that people live for, and the Apostle Paul is talking here, witnessing to these people. And Paul makes a little statement, and when they opposed themselves, and it's interesting because I was listening to a sermon by Sam Gipp. Most of you from our church have heard Brother Gipp, great preacher. To me, he's the premier intellect when it comes to the King James Bible. But not intellect like boring, off the chart stuff, but he just knows how to answer people's questions in regard to the Bible, what Bible to read, whether this King James truly is a trustworthy and a book that we could rely on. But I enjoy him. But he was preaching a sermon, and it just happened to make a statement on that verse, when they opposed themselves, and I got thinking about it and thought, how many times people literally they're out to get themselves. Usually if I'm playing a game with the grandkids and I'm here at home, and we've got a ping pong table and a foosball table, and of course we have table games, but I'm with the grandkids now. Josh's kids, they're getting fairly good at ping pong. Once in a while they can beat me, and I don't have anybody to play against, and I don't have time to play to be good, but that's my opponent, and so I'm opposing them, and I want their mistakes to help me win, or my good decisions to help me win, or whatever it might be. But it's really true, that little statement, but they opposed themselves. When they opposed themselves, it's a sad thing. The world that we're in, and I get the sun coming up here, trying to decide whether I want to be blinded by the sun or half in, half out. That's a little better there, but the sun's moving this morning. But I was thinking about Tiger Woods, and you look at the guy, and he's good looking and sharp and professional and famous, and I'm sure bucket loads of money, and he's dedicated his life to walking around a pasture with a metal stick and an 1.5 inch diameter ball. And when he, I don't know who's a Christian and who's not, but let's just assume he's trusted Christ and he gets to heaven. When he walks in those golden streets, he won't bring a golf club with him. There'll be no sign saying, "Welcome, Tiger." There'll be no parks where come get Tiger Woods' signature. There'll be no golf course in New Jerusalem where you go get golf lessons from Tiger Woods. Well, at least, and I could just see him walking into heaven the same way anybody gets to heaven is getting there by the blood of Christ, not by their church or their good works. And I think about a person I know who's been homeless and rented a room and worked and sometimes not worked. And I think of the number of people that they've witnessed to and led to Christ, the number of people they've invited to church who've come to church and grown in grace. I mean, I remember sitting with one of our great couples and helping in Sunday school, and they sang in the choir and did all these different things. And one of our guys is basically homeless, met them at a restaurant and got them, at the time homeless, not now, but got him into church. And he's gonna, that homeless, formerly homeless, never had anything person is gonna walk into heaven wealthy, and Tiger Woods gonna walk into heaven flat busted. And at least from what all appearances, if he's even saved. When we oppose, to do something that is opposing ourselves, to do something that's hurting us, to defeat us, my opponent, the one I'm opposed, I want to defeat this opponent. Why would I oppose myself? And you get thinking about the things people do where they hurt themselves. Think about, you've witnessed to people, I'm sure, and you sit there talking to somebody and trying to explain to them about heaven. And they say, well, why should I believe the Bible? And they want to argue with you about whether the Bible's true or not. They're opposing themselves. If they win that argument, if they walk away thinking they won, they're going to go to hell. And they will have opposed themselves straight into a lake of fire. And I don't want to oppose myself. I want to be on my team. And I want to be doing things that would be a blessing to me in eternity as well as to God and others. I'd love to say I'm so noble. All I want to do is, all for the glory of God. But I want to do well for me eternally. And, you get thinking about the little widow who puts a little bit of her Social Security check in the offering plate and maybe helps out in a nursery or sings in the choir or whatever. And the retired couple that doesn't have much, but maybe they work as ushers or Sunday school teachers, or maybe they help on a bus route or whatever. And you think about the rewards that they'll have walking into heaven compared to a wealthy royal couple, the queen or whoever, if they were even saved, who everything they did was for this earth. Everything they did was for gain. You think about, especially athletics paints the picture, but wealth does. I think of the number of people, business CEOs, people who labor for that success on the job, and they climb the career ladder, and now they got this incredible position. But if they've never done anything for God, let's say along the way they trusted Christ, and they're on their way to heaven. But if they've never really done anything for eternity, never passed out a gospel tract, never taught a Sunday school class, never helped a missionary, they just climbed their ladder, and now they're in that position of earthly esteem. And then one day they die. Remember in Luke chapter 16, there's a rich man who fared sumptuously, was the biblical term. He was rich. And at his gate, there was a homeless guy, we'd call him, a man who begged and was sick. And it said the dogs came and licked his sores. And here's this now that rich man was lost, and he ended up in hell in Luke 16, the poor man in heaven. But think about the wealthy and the CEO. And here's some poor widow or some retired couple just enough to get along on, but they put a little money in a missionary's hand. They passed out a gospel tract, or maybe they helped in a class. When those people walk into heaven, that CEO position is going to so oppose that person's destiny. We ought to live for things that are profitable, things that are beneficial for eternity. I've mentioned this before, but it's stuck in my head. The magazine, as an airplane magazine, they interviewed the top CEOs in America, the top guys in the business world, and asked them the same questions. And how did you start? And what was your education? Blah, 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 these different things. And I just skimmed through just quick questions. It wasn't a lengthy article. But one question jumped out at me. It said, if you could redo your career, what would you do differently? And I looked at it, and every one, I think it was 7 top CEOs, however many it was, what would you do differently? Everyone answered the same. Everyone. Now the others, some education was different, some background was different, some, they're part of the country they're from. Everyone, those are all different answers. But this answer, everybody said the same thing. You know what they said? I'd spend more time with my family. If I could redo my entire career, I'd spend more time with my family. And then some added a comment or two. By the time I had the money and the time and the leisure to do something with my children, they were so far grown and they had no relationship with me. They just were happy to have my money. They didn't want a relationship with me. And some of them, they lost a marriage along the way. They wish they'd have spent more time with their spouse and kept their marriage. And they gained the fame and the accolades of men, but they lost that which was most important. Well, think about this. Think about eternally important. Eternity. What are we going to do in eternity? And understand this, God's given us a beautiful home, and we've got nice things, but I don't live for these things. If we needed to move into a little apartment somewhere, and if we needed to move to a mission field and live in a grass hut someplace, like some of our missionary dear preacher friends around the world do, it would be okay, because I know where we're going. It would just be a visit. And where we're going, just think, we're going to walk, and you could see us approaching that New Jerusalem, because we'll come and go. What are the point of gates if you're not coming and going? And I believe we'll have access to things on earth and things in the earthly Jerusalem and the heavenly Jerusalem, and the kingdoms of this world will bring their glory into that city, and we're walking up toward those giant 120-foot high pure gold walls, so pure gold you can see through them, and that beautiful city, 1,600 miles wide and 1,600 miles long, stretching from LA to Oklahoma and to Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, to something that huge, and it comes floating down from God out of heaven, and I think it's going to hover. I don't think it's going to come to the earth. I think it's going to hover, and we're going to be in and out of that city. You think it'll matter that you drove a Lexus? You're not taking your Lexus into heaven. You're not taking your Rolls Royce into heaven. You're not taking your Ferrari into heaven. But here's somebody that never had a whole lot of anything, but they took this book, and week after week, they opened this book to a group of little boys and girls and taught them the Word of God. And some of those boys and girls got saved. And some of those boys and girls grew up to have Christian homes. And here, this man or ladies that never had much of this world's goods, they're walking into that New Jerusalem, and they'll be eternally rich because they lived for the things that are eternal. This book that's eternal, and because while they were on earth, they took what they had, and they didn't oppose themselves. Don't let things that you have by the mercy and grace of God oppose you and hurt you. The things God's given us richly to enjoy, nothing wrong with enjoying them, but they shouldn't be our motivator. They shouldn't be the thing we live for. Think of the football players and basketball players in the professional world. They live for that sport, and maybe some become very famous, and then they die and go to hell, or they die and they get to heaven having done nothing for God and eternity. And I think about couples, Christian couples who lost their marriage, and they fought over who got this possession and who got that possession, and the bitterness and the tension. And what is that? They opposed themselves. Things don't matter. It's a hard world, and good people could lose a marriage, but we don't have to get fighting and arguing over a material thing. I think of people who opened this book, good people, who taught little children or taught a big class, and maybe on our big days got to go out in public and speak to groups of 20 or 200 or 500 people, and open this book up. And because of some little fuss with somebody at church, pastor or someone else, they walked out of church and they quit serving God, and maybe they feel like, hey, they won that. I'll show those Bible preaching, soul winning, narrow minded. I'll show those Baptists. You oppose yourself. We're going to walk into the same city together. We're going to walk in on the same golden streets together. All that those people did was quit living for the things that are eternal. I heard a statement, and it was a good statement. And this preacher, and he was being interviewed. I'm not sure what the name of his church is, so I don't know what he believes. But he said he's a Californian, I know that, because he said all these people who left California for money, he said, are we supposed to let money lead us? Are we supposed to have money make our decisions for us? He said, really? Honestly? Should we not take the things of God? Now, God may lead you to move somewhere, but let God lead you, not your dollar. I'm going because I'm going to be able to buy a house. I'm going because I'll get better wages. And the survivalists, I know people, they're getting land out in the desert or up in the mountains, and they're going to have a little survival cabin, and they're stocking it with food and ammunition and whatever. I think, what's the point of that? When the trumpet sounds, we're all going to heaven. If we're saved, we're going to go to that same city, and those people will have spent their time and their planning and their research, and they got solar generators, and they've got water purification things, so they'll have, during the apocalypse, they'll have water. Folks, the Lord is my light and my salvation, and the Lord's going to take care of us. I'm not saying you shouldn't save something, but don't live for it. Don't make it your life. Life, I think of Pastor Blue. So often he said, life is short, will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. What are we living for? I like fun. I like mountains, and I grew up where hunting and fishing was common, and a little mountain church here and there, and in the country. And I've often thought, I wouldn't have minded if God put me in one of those little mountain communities where I could fish a little bit here and there and hunt a little bit and be out of the city. But when 10,000 years from now, will it matter that you had a fishing stream behind your house and somebody else had a ghetto behind theirs? No, what's going to matter is what we did for Jesus. And we camp, our kids, we've gone to the mountains, and we've camped, and we've gone to lakes and rented wave runners, and we've done fun things. We've rented kayaks on the ocean, and we enjoy life. We've taken our guns and shot. Not much hunting as a family. We go to gun ranges, and we'll bike ride, and I'm not anti-fun. I like vacations. One time we were able to take our whole family to Hawaii. That was great. Snorkeling with the kids and seeing millions of fish, and coming out of the water saying, isn't God amazing? But it's not what we're going to live for. My wife and I were on a cruise one time. Somebody gave us a cruise, and just a real short couple of day thing, but they wanted to do something for us. And on cruises, you can eat when and where you want, but at the formal dinner each night, they assign you a table. And if you're a group, they'll put you together. But if you're not, you'll just be with whoever. We sat with this table with this one couple, and they were our age, maybe a little older. They'd retired a little early, and we got talk. What do you do? And they were on their way on this little short cruise, but they were going to go from this point to Costa Rica somewhere to go on zip lines. They said, we go all over the world to the most amazing. We hear about a zip line in Tibet or I don't know wherever, and I'm thinking, what an empty life. Let's hear it for the guy who is the usher or the choir member, or plays in the orchestra, passes out a couple gospel tracts during the week, and greets visitors on Sunday, or helps lead singing in junior church. Tell you, when we get to that golden city, there'll be no rewards for people who rode the best zip lines. Now, life may be so boring for some people, they don't know what to do, and they've got money, so they're trying to find happiness in this world, but they literally are opposing themselves. Get saved, learn the Word of God, get in a good church, and live for others. And those Jews, Paul's there preaching, trying to get them into heaven, and they are opposing themselves. Paul said they're not willing to listen that they might help themselves by trusting Christ, and then help themselves by serving God. I think of a lady, great lady, and I watched her one day in our auditorium. During Vacation Bible School many years ago, decades ago, a packed out auditorium, and she kept those kids spellbound. She was so good teaching children, and hundreds of kids there just listening to this lady, and she's gifted. And through a series of events, their family moved, and all I could think of is I hope they're serving God. They're great people. But, the Bible warns to beware lest that no man take our crown. I don't want people that are so gifted by God, so blessed by God, for the sake of getting more money or getting more equity and being able to do whatever, to stop doing that which will reward us eternally. And there's something about these rewards where we cast our crowns at Jesus' feet, and there's something about our rewards are what we bring to offer him, and I don't want to be flat busted when I come to bring my offering to the Savior who died for me. I want to encourage you to live for God, serve God. We don't have a lot of money, but let's use some of it for God. We don't have a lot of talent, but let's use our talent for God. We don't have a lot of time. Many of our people work so many hours, but find a niche of time and live for God and live for others. And let's don't oppose ourselves. One of the best sermons I ever heard my pastor preach was one word: others. Just others. And how we ought to live our lives caring for the lost world. Let's don't oppose ourselves with what we fight for and labor for and invest in. If I've said this before, you may have heard it, but if one of my children could be a world famous athlete, an Olympic athlete, a professional athlete, and not do anything for God, or they could just work a regular job, teach a Sunday school class, and be a faithful church member, I'd rather they be the church member. Years ago, just starting the church, and it was a couple of years before an Olympics, and one of our couples that I'd been spending time with trying to win to Christ, their son was exceptional, early teen years, and exceptional in wrestling. And he had a chance to go to a boarding school training for the Olympic wrestling. And here they were I don't know if it ever happened, but they were very seriously considering taking their boy, 13 years old, 14 years old, and sending him away for the next 2 or 3 years to go to school with people he didn't know, to live in a home with people the parents didn't know, in hopes that he might make the world's Olympic wrestling team. And those prime years to influence that child, I can't even imagine it. God gave me my children, but also God gave those children to me. Psalms 127 says, as arrows are in the hands of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. They'll speak with the enemy in the gate. I'm to take my children like an arrow in a bow and launch them for God, to speak with the enemy, to deal with the enemies of God, and to get people saved, and to love the lost, and to reach this old dying world. I don't want to oppose myself in hoping my kids get rich and famous. My child could be a model on a magazine. I'd hate that. I'd hate that. The vanity, the broken hearts. Let's not oppose ourselves. Let's consider what we do, and let's live for others, because that is the greatest life you'll ever live.